everyone, and welcome to another review from Colour with Claire. Today I'm doing a product review and I have the Derwent Inktense paint pan travel set to show you. So we've all heard of Derwent Inktense pencils. That's these pencils here. And these are absolutely incredible. They're not watercolour pencils. They do actually contain ink, which makes them incredibly vibrant and intense, hence the name. So you use them with water. Most colourists will be familiar with these. You can also get the Derwent Inktense blocks, which is exactly the same ink used in the pencils, just in block form. So you can use them more like a paint or like a pastel, rather than using the pencils. So these are really good for covering larger areas than you might do with the pencils. And then this is the brand new addition to the Derwent Inktense range. So what's the difference between the paint pan travel set, the pencils and the blocks? Well, with the pencils, you do have to apply the pencil to the paper and then wash over it with water on a paintbrush to activate the colour. You can touch the paintbrush, or the water brush, sorry, to the end of the pencil, but that can damage the cores and weaken them over time. So a lot of people don't like to do that. Now, with the Inktense blocks, you can of course apply your brush straight to them. There's no problem there whatsoever, but they are quite large and quite cumbersome, and they're not brilliant for taking out and about with you. So I think this is why a paint pan was required, I think, in the Derwent Inktense range. This is really, really portable, and it's something you can just chuck in your bag, chuck in your car, take it with you anywhere you want, and it's really contained and small. So it's about the size of a Nintendo DS. It fits in your hands really nicely, and it's really well made as well. It's very durable plastic. It opens up to reveal 12 different Derwent Inktense colours. And as you can see, they're all contained within these little half pans, as watercolourists call them. So I'm not very used to working with watercolours, but I do love the look of these watercolour sets. Everything's all contained in one place. You can actually remove the sets. So they've got these little handles either side. So you can remove a whole set of 6, and you can even remove the individual pans themselves. It's a little bit tricky. I'll give it a go. But they have little sort of grips on the side of them that if you've got nails you can pick up and remove. And I've just noticed that underneath the pans there is a place where you can push them up, so that might be easier to do that way. So if I just bring it to camera, you can actually push them up through the bottom rather than piddling them out like I just did. So you can take individual pans out, you can swap them around, you can make your own colour combos, put them wherever you want to put them. It also comes with this water brush, which I've filled with water. It does come empty, and it has this handy stopper so that you can take it completely full out with you and just start painting immediately. It also contains a little sponge. I'm not entirely sure what this is for. I don't know whether you use it on the paper or whether you just use it to clean your brush. That might actually be the use for it. And then at the top here, underneath the lid, there is a 5-portioned palette so that you can blend, and you've got somewhere to do that, all contained within this. So it's really, really handy, brilliant format if you are out and about and you want something that's nice and put together and can close up and won't get everywhere. So let's test out the colours first of all. So this is made with exactly the same pigment, exactly the same formulation as you would find in the Inktense pencils. So it's no different to that, it's just in block form. They are permanent, as all Inktense products are. So if you put them down on the paper, you won't be able to rework them once they are dry. But that also means that you can put layers on the top without affecting what's underneath. So all I've done is taken the stopper out of the bottom half of this aqua brush and screwed on at the top part. So I'll just make sure that we've got some water coming through here. Just give it a squeeze, there we go. And I've written down all of the colour names that are in this travel set. So we've got the Sun Yellow. I'm going to add some water to it. Now usually with Inktense you don't need a lot of water. It activates very, very quickly and very vibrantly, so I'm not putting a lot on there whatsoever. We'll just see how we go. So immediately a very thick and opaque swatch of colour, and I'm going to just take this right to the end and see how far this is lasting. So even there right at the end, it's quite saturated with colour. It's not as saturated obviously as the beginning where we started, but it's still got colour on there, so a little bit really does go a long way. Now let's use that sponge to just clean off the brush. Maybe that's what it's for, I'm not sure, you can tell me in the comments. Now we've got mango. So this is a beautiful orange colour. Just a little bit on the brush. We'll see how far it goes. Absolutely gorgeous colour. And you can see the gradient. So if we just put a little bit more on the top there, you can add more colour to saturate it a bit more if you want to, and it just washes out to a nice pale hue. Let's try the poppy red. So it might be a little bit different for colourists who don't watercolour to be using paintbrushes and aqua brushes, because it does feel like you are painting rather than colouring, but you can still use them in your colouring books. Just because they're in a paint format, it's still exactly the same formulation as it is in your pencils. So this is just a different way of doing it, just mixes it up a little bit. So let's add a little bit more of that poppy red just to the front there, just to the very beginning. Keep that gradation going nicely. This aqua brush is really nice as well. It does release enough water, not too much, not too little. Next up we've got the dark plum, which I'm guessing we go this way rather than in the 6. So let's try this dark plum. Now this should be a beautiful purple. Let's see what happens. Oh yeah. Gorgeous sort of reddish purple, definitely more on the red side than the blue side. But of course you could use that mixing palette to mix up some blue in there and make it a little bit darker, a bit more of a violet. So you do have to work quite quickly with Inktense if you want to keep it very gradiated and not have any marks, because as soon as they dry, even as soon as they start to dry, they are permanent. So just make sure you're working quite quickly. But so far so good. I'm super impressed with the amount of pigment. For some reason I didn't think they'd be as pigmented as the pencils. I'm not sure why, but they definitely are. Next colour is Mid Ultramarine. I'm probably squirting a little bit too much water on this, to be honest, but we'll go with it. But it is really handy to have this swatch chart going from your darkest, most intense colour to the most diluted form, because then you can see how the colours work in both ways. So you might only want a very slight tint of colour, and you can see what that looks like over at this end of the chart, whereas in other occasions you might want a very thick opaque dark colour, and you can also see what that looks like. Next up we've got the bright blue. So I'm just thinking also that this sponge might be just to dab off any excess water if you feel like there might be a bit too much water on it, just like that, just to dab it off. You could probably use it for a lot of different things actually. So this is the beautiful bright blue, which is a darker blue than the Mid Ultramarine. We've then got the Racing Green. So this should be a beautiful green colour. Let's test it. Just get rid of some of that colour. Sorry, water even. Try and get a bit more thick colour on there. So Racing Green. Oh, lovely. This is quite an aqua green actually. It's not a true green. There's a lot of blue in there. Lovely aquamarine colour almost. So despite me going over the edge just there, that was my clumsiness, this water brush is actually really nice and precise. So you can be getting into smaller areas with the brush which you might encounter in your colouring books. Next one is Teal Green. Pretty sure that this is not Teal Green, let me just check. Oh, it might be actually. I'm just wondering whether they've been swapped over. I haven't touched them, but they might have been. This could be the Racing Green and that could be the Teal Green actually, because that makes more sense to me. But you know what, I'm just gonna lay it down, because Racing Green is generally quite dark and teal is very similar to that colour, so I'm thinking that this is actually the Racing Green. This one's got tons and tons of pigment in it. This is really, really vibrant. So I'm gonna say, because I know that that is not teal, that this is the Racing Green and that is the Teal Green. So just be careful when you get your paint pan set that they are all in order, because usually they are when you first get a brand new product, but I don't think that this one is. Right, so this colour is called Kiwi, and I'm going to go with that because it's the only green left and it does seem like it would be called Kiwi. It's a very nice light sort of fresh green. Yeah, that sponge is quite handy to get rid of your excess water. I think with me not being very experienced with watercolour paint sets, you probably all know what this is, but it's just me not having owned many before. Okay, so the burnt yellow ochre, which is definitely going to be this colour. It's this beautiful sort of warm brown. Yep. So we've got one more brown after this, which is the natural brown, which I'm guessing is going to be a much darker brown. So at least you do get a couple of browns in there, because that can often be the case with the small sets like this, that you don't get many, if any, browns. Okay, and then that natural brown. So this looks like a very oaky brown. Let's check it out. Yep. It's a really dark woody brown. Got some red in it as well. Beautiful. So you don't need a lot of water to activate these, as exactly the same with the Inktense pencils. So don't worry too much about your coloured pages buckling under the weight of the water. Just don't use too much. You really, really don't need it. These are very, very saturated with pigment. So don't worry about that. Just try and be careful with your water and you should be fine. So if you're wanting to colour backgrounds or larger areas, these paint pans are ideal, just like the blocks. Now, I'm thinking that once these paint pans have run out, because they are only half pan sizes, once they've run out, you can't actually get, at the moment, any refills, and that's probably because it's fairly cheap in the first instance, so you could probably just afford to buy a whole new set. But what you could do, if you do have some Inktense blocks handy, is when these are all finished with, you could break up the blocks and put them in place of these and just use them like the paints. I think that would be quite a good idea because the refills don't currently exist, and I'm not sure if they're planning on doing refills for them or whether you should just buy the whole set again. Anyway, we have swatched out all of the colours now so you can see what they look like. Beautiful vivid colour, good gradients as well, good quality aqua brush, really handy sponge. Just be careful that your pans are actually in the right place. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to test them out in an actual colouring book. So I've picked out this Hannah Lynn Mermaids, Fairies and Other Girls of Whimsy. I usually use this book to do lots of testing in because we have a lot of wide open areas. We have thick black lines on these illustrations, so we've got room to go wrong. And it's also that Create Space paper, which is pretty rubbish. So we get to really test them out and see if they can hold their own against even the worst kind of paper. Okay, so I've just picked out any old illustration here. This is purely a tester page. We're not going to try and colour this perfectly or anything. We're just going to see what we can do. So, looking at the colours again, I think we should try and do a bit of a blend from the poppy red to the mango. See how that goes. So I'm going to get a bit of the poppy red. Now it's going to be fairly difficult to do this on the paper because of them drying so quickly and drying permanently. So we are going to make use of that blending palette, but I just want to try it out. Beautiful, vibrant colour. Just want to try it out on the paper just to see what happens. So let's get rid of the red. Go in with the mango. Now that red is still slightly wet, so we can work with it a little bit, which is good. You just have to be quick. I'm going to add a bit more mango in here just to bring out the colour a bit more. So I'm actually pretty impressed with that blend, to say that these are Inktense and they dry quickly and are very difficult to sort of get a blend with like this. I'm pretty impressed with that blend, yeah. Okay, now we're going to try palette blending. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this poppy red, pop it on the palette, beautiful vibrant colour. And then some of the mango. And then let's blend these together to see what we get. So the red really doesn't need a lot whatsoever. It's quite overpowering, excuse me, on this mango. So I'm going straight over the mango, and we've made a bit of a darker orange, and we can make a darker orange still just by adding a bit more red. Now I want to know what happens if we go ahead and try and blend two of the primary colours, so for example the blue and the yellow, and see if we get a nice green. So let's go in with this light ultramarine or mid ultramarine colour. Pop some of that down. Okay, and then we'll grab our yellow. So we've got a good amount there, and let's see if they blend. So straight away you can see we've got a beautiful pale sort of limey green. It's turning into a deeper grass green as we add more blue. If we add more yellow, we can make it lighter. If we add more blue, we can make it darker. You know how mixing colours works. We've all been to school. But yes, as you can see, you can create your own colours, which might be a bit difficult if you've only got the Inktense pencils. So this is actually good for creating colours as well and mixing. So yeah, beautiful sort of olivey green colour almost. If we add a bit more blue, let's get it a bit darker. There we are. So you can just mess around with this, make your own colours, do some beautiful blends in the palette as well. And you can just clean this out with a wipe or a wet cloth, so you can use it again and again. Okay, so we've had a look at the paints on a colouring book. As you can see, there's a slight bit of warping there, a bit of buckling, and it does show through on the other side, but we haven't actually got anything on the page behind. So pretty good to use in colouring books, even these really kind of rubbishy paper ones. Now then, what else can I tell you about these? So they are highly light fast, and that means that you could... That actually looks like a woman from the side. How freaky is that? Let me just show you. That could just be me, but it looks like a side portrait of a woman. Anyway, so they're really highly light fast, and that means that if they are exposed to the sun, they're not going to fade or lose their colour or change colour as some cheaper supplies can do. So these really are professional quality. Now Derwent uses the blue wool test to test their light fastness, and all of these paints come out at an 8, which is the highest on the blue wool scale. So they are excellent light fast, an excellent light fast rating. That means that these would stay, your pictures would stay exactly the same colour as they looked on day one, 100 years later. So really, really, really great quality, and they're also vegan friendly in case that matters to you. Right, so how much does it cost? I'm sure you're all gagging to know. This is actually not even £20, it's £19.49 at the current time on Amazon UK, which I think is an incredibly reasonable price for this. These pans are going to last ages and ages because you just do not need to use a lot. There is a slight discrepancy in the pans themselves in some cases. This natural brown seems to pop out of the pan, so there's quite a lot in that, whereas the bright blue is sort of under the level of the pan, so there's a bit of inconsistency with how much you actually get in each pan. But for 20 quid, I would say this is brilliant, just to take out with you, to always have intense colour, and just try your hand at painting instead of colouring, see what happens. Now on Amazon US they're $38.99, which is quite steep, probably because of postage and things I should imagine, but I imagine you can get them cheaper somewhere else. Maybe you can buy them from Amazon UK, get them shipped over, and that'll be even cheaper for you. But I will be leaving all the links in the description below for you to go and have a look. Do let me know in the comments what you think of this paint pan set. If you think it's worth getting, even if you've got the blocks and the pencils, I still think this is a really good product to have. It's something you can keep in your car, you can keep in your bag. It's not going to take up much room. And yeah, so let me know in the comments. Do give the video a thumbs up. That's the #1 best thing you can do to help me. And also subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon on Colour with Claire.